Good morning and welcome to each one. It's good to see some visitors here. Um, Maria was hoping to see Vernon. Always love to catch up. Reminds me of a time in my life, spending time down there at Fresh Start, good memories. And the rest of you that are here, visitors or home people, glad that you're here this morning. So Wednesday evening we had a men's meeting. And by the way, you will get a little minutes or report of that in your mailbox Wednesday evening, I believe. Derek is in charge of that, so they aren't here this morning. But so when that happens, I'm in charge of a men's meeting. It goes until Thursday that I can start thinking about a sermon and start prepping for a sermon. So Thursday morning I was at work and was getting ready to run some wood through the planer sander. And I turned around and looked to the east, and I have some big windows there, and I saw this beautiful orange sunrise. And immediately, I guess it was the Spirit of God just brought into my mind about the second coming of Jesus. And immediately following that was, that's what you're supposed to preach about. People have asked me, how do you know what subject to choose? How do you know it's the Spirit's leading? And it's hard to explain, but something just resonates within you. And that was one of those mornings I just knew it was going to be something about Jesus coming again. And for the next couple of days I kept praying about it, and I wasn't sure exactly what do you preach about the second coming. And so I just decided to read the scriptures, especially focusing in the Gospels. What did Jesus say? What did he have to say about his second coming? And so that's just simply what we're going to look at this morning. And I've been reading in Mark, so I know Matthew 24 is the popular one, but Mark 13 is basically the equivalent of that. So you can turn to Mark 13. I've been reading through Mark in my personal devotions, and so I just decided to stay with that. And we'll look at other verses too as we go along. And if you want a title, it's Jesus' Warnings in the Light of His Return. As Jesus took time to teach, something for you to just think about and kind of dig around your memory. When Jesus was teaching about his return, and there's a lot of different places where he talked about it. Of course, the Gospels repeat some of those. What was his main emphasis? What would he generally talk about? Was it warnings? Was it encouragement? Keep hanging on. This will be the end of things. Which way was it? And this chapter kind of gives us a little nutshell of all his teachings when it comes to that ratio of warnings and encouragement. I'm going to read the whole chapter. It's rather lengthy, but it just sets a really good setting foundation. So, Mark 13, verse 1. And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here? And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? And Jesus answering them began to say, Take heed, lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. Verse 8, For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows, or birthing pains. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. And the gospel must first be published among all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate. But whatsoever shall be given you in that hour, that speak ye. For it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and the children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains, and let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein, to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. And then, if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christs and false prophets shall rise, and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take heed, behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost parts of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass, till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and of that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house, and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Did you catch the ratio in there about warnings versus encouragement? It's mostly warnings, isn't it? That's what I picked up as I read different scriptures. Most of Jesus' remarks to his followers, as he told them things that would happen, signs to watch for. These are signs that the end is coming close. And then there was always warnings. Let's just go back to verse 3. Let's just go back a little farther. At the start of the chapter, they were coming out of the temple, and the disciples were like us men tend to be. We see a beautiful building, and we're kind of impressed. And if you're a builder especially, you realize the work that goes into something like that, and the craftsmanship. And they were like, wow, look at this. And Jesus just kind of salted it down. Is like, hey, you see these buildings, there's not going to be left one stone upon another. And here it was the temple, the house of God, and he's just saying it's going to be destroyed. So they apparently had questions running through their minds. They were wondering what's going on. And so took a walk, sat up there on Mount of Olives where they could still see the temple. And then Peter, James, John, and Andrew said, What's going to be happening? Tell us, when are these things going to happen? And isn't that the question that often comes up? When? When is the day? What is the day of Christ's return? And he gave them a specific answer, didn't he? No, he didn't even answer the question. Maybe that tells us that's not the important thing, figuring out exactly what day it's going to be. In fact, when you go back to the last part of the chapter, and he says, no man knows. And so um, he just said, for the first warning, he says, take heed lest any man deceive you. Be careful people don't lead you astray. And so I think that is the first warning that we need to watch as we think about the end times. We are in the end times, by the way. We just are. Now, am I saying he's coming back tomorrow or next week? I don't know. No man knows. But we're in the end times. And we can't afford to think, I'll touch more on this later, but we can't afford to think, well, I still have time. I can do this, this, and this, and then I'll get ready. Because, well, a few signs haven't been fulfilled yet, so apparently Christ isn't coming back just yet, so I don't have to be just really on my toes. No, he says, take heed lest any man deceive you. Verse 3 there. This is the day of YouTube prophets, books in abundance, all kinds of things. And we have to watch. I just think back of the warning that Chad Wenger gave to us in those meetings. Know the author. And I think just recently somebody else brought up here across the pulpit that when there is a prophecy, and if it doesn't come true, according to the scriptures, that man is a false prophet. And there have been so many of those that have spoken prophecies, they said, and they didn't come true. So let's follow this. Let's follow this warning. Take heed lest any man lead you astray. That's what it means when they're that deceive. They're going to take you off the right path. And he says specifically then in verse 6, if they claim to be the Christ. I don't know how it's all going to be, but I am of a firm belief that when Jesus comes back, there will be no question. We will know that it is Jesus. And here, other people make claims, and I don't know how they actually get people to believe them. And I want to say that carefully, but maybe the warning is, take heed that no man deceive you in small things today, in being obedient to Scripture, to the principles that are laid out. Because if I start pushing aside something that I don't like, and I say, well, this, and if I start walking in disobedience, am I not opening myself up to other false teachings? Am I not putting myself in a dangerous position? Maybe that's how it all begins. I'm not sure. But it seems like, especially when it comes to the end times, to Jesus' second coming, there's so many teachings, so many things. And you can relax. I'm not going to get into the eschatology and how all the events and all of that today. I'm just looking at Jesus' warnings and his response to his teachings, telling his followers what we need to be aware of. And this first one, take heed that no man deceive you. Verse 7 and 8 sounds like today. It says, you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. All kinds of things happening in the world today. Wars. But he says, again, it's an instruction. He says, be not troubled. He goes on and he says, the end isn't just yet. And then verse 8, nation's going to rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. We're hearing all kinds of those things on the political world scenes. And then he says there shall be earthquakes in various places. Maybe places, I kind of get the idea, maybe in places that we don't expect. And I know California, it's expected that they have earthquakes, but wasn't it just one of these last days they had 3 earthquakes in 24-hour period? Then it says there shall be famines and troubles. Famines. We tend to think famines are when there's no rain, there's drought. But if you go down to Asheville, North Carolina, there's a famine. The grocery stores are empty. It's a famine. It's different causes, but in a sense, it is a famine. Things are happening. Troubles. It has the idea of just boiling water, just rolling water. It's unsettled. But he says, be not troubled. Don't. It means literally to wail, to be frightened. How do we respond when these things happen? Do we get shook up? I think often we're kind of far removed from some of those things. And it's maybe too easy to just kind of push them off and, well, it happens along the coast, it happens down south there, and whatever, and we're kind of here, kind of inland, we're kind of safe, and it's kind of easy to push it out. But he says, unsettling things will be happening. That's kind of the idea. All kinds of things that are happening. The troubles are like disturbances. They can actually be seditions. And sedition is when someone goes against an established order. It's often used in political settings. But let's look a little bit closer. So often when we look at these troubles and these signs, we tend to look out into the world out there, right? But now let's look close to us. Are there things that are happening that may even be signs of the end times in our world? Let's think about the seditions. If that means about going against established organization, I'm guessing a lot of us have acquaintances that or we know of someone, maybe fairly close to us even, that they're walking away from established churches, and they're just kind of like washing their hands from institutions, things that have been there for years, and maybe even going farther, walking away from scriptural principles. That can be troubling. How does that affect you? Several things that can happen. It can maybe discourage us, but if it's someone that's close to us and we're in constant or often in conversation with them, and they push their agenda, they push their teachings and that kind of thing, does it wear us down to the point where we maybe start thinking, well, maybe I've been looking at that doctrine wrong. Maybe that's not really what it means. Maybe that's not what that verse is really saying, and that doubt starts coming in. Maybe the troubles, how does he say it there? Famines and troubles. Troubles is the word that had that idea. Maybe those troubles come to us in little different ways than some of those natural events that are happening and that we often tend to look for. I just wondered, are some of those things happening in our lives, and are they troubling us and maybe unsettling us? But he says, be not troubled. That's his instruction to us when those things happen. Whether it is those natural disasters, whether it is the rumors of wars and what's that going to do to our economy, or the sedition within our own country. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen after the election, whichever way the election goes. Is there even going to be peace? And so we can get all riled up, we can get all worried. Jesus says, this is all part of the end times. It's all going to happen, but be not troubled. If we're not going to be troubled, what's our option? Isn't it going to be our trust in him? Isn't that where we're going to find our peace? And we recognize that this is actually not our country. Heaven is my home. That is my country. That's where I'm truly a citizen of. And maybe if I'm getting too stirred up and too worried, maybe my citizenship has been slipping, and my loyalties, my allegiances are too much to this country here. Let's jump down to verses 24 and start there. In between, he was talking about persecution that we're going to face, and then it seemed like some things that maybe especially the Jews at that time were going to face, the destruction of Jerusalem. Then verse 24, my Bible has a heading, it says, the coming of the Son of Man. And it seems like he's maybe turning more specifically to events that will precede his second coming. And by the way, I'm not trying to cause doubt in anybody's mind today. I'm just repeating some of Jesus' warnings here as we look at the end time. But we have to be ready. We have to keep this in mind. So verse 24, he talks about some specific things that are going to happen. Again, seemed like some natural phenomena. And then verse 26, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And like I said before, when that event happens, I don't think there's going to be a question in anybody's mind whether you're a believer or an unbeliever at that point. So he talks about it. He says, here are some of the signs. And then verse 32, but of that day and that hour knoweth no man. So he's reiterating again, you're not going to be able to pinpoint the exact day, but he is coming again. And then his instructions are in verse 33, take ye heed, watch and pray, for you know not when the time is. Isn't that just the general theme that we get all along in all of these scriptures, especially when Jesus in the Gospels, he's talking about what his disciples recorded? It was, we have to be constantly alert. That's the main thing. We have to be on our toes all the time. I wonder, if you're like I am, it's not often enough that I think about Christ's return. And it's actually a part of my actual thinking process. And the thought following that should be, am I ready? It's not that we're doubting our salvation, but he says, take heed, watch, and pray. Those three things together. We have to listen, we have to take heed to the warnings that are given, and we have to stay alert. We have to be alert to what's happening. We have to know what's happening, be alert to what's happening in our own life. The Sunday school lesson talked about how easily, apparently, we get drawn away from the things of God. For 16 years, can you imagine, we start building a new church house. What would if that would have happened here? We would have started building this auditorium, and then for some reason, for 16 years, nothing happened. We'd have some pretty impatient men. We'd have had some pretty impatient men here, wouldn't we? That's what happened there. And it was because they were pulled away. What is it that pulls your mind away and keeps you busy thinking other things as opposed to thinking about being conscious of the fact that Jesus is coming again? There have been enough signs out there, things that have happened, that we know it's close. I don't think it's really, for most of us, it's probably not going to be that we're so locked up in sin and things that just draw us away, and it could be. That very well could be. But I think it's just the routine of life. We have to live. We have to go to work, right? We have to provide for our family. There's all kinds of things that need to be done. And those things just kind of put a gray film over the things of Jesus' return and the things of being spiritually aware. For Lonnie Martin, Friday morning, Jesus came back. What if that would have been you? Would you have been ready Friday morning? Had no time to make that last minute adjustment spiritually. None of us are guaranteed. Christ's return may be, for some of us, most likely will be as individuals. Could be that he comes. So I want you to do something right now. At least those of you who are awake, I want you just blink your eyes. Did you do that? Did you blink your eyes? How many of you had time to pray and make one more thing right? None of us. In fact, you didn't even think about praying, did you? You were just thinking about blinking your eyes. That's why we have to stay ready. We have to be ready all the time and stay ready spiritually. I'm not saying that we have to just constantly be thinking, oh, Jesus could be coming back. Jesus could be coming back. But we stay in shape, if you want to say it that way. Yesterday morning, on the way to Wakarusa, there was another accident. We came up on it, and a young man in a moped heading north on County Road 9 blew through the stop sign, and a big box truck took him out. Another fatality. No time to make that last minute prayer. And in 1 Corinthians 15:52, he says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. If we look at the whole scripture there, I'm not going to take the time. He's talking about Jesus coming back, and he's talking about our bodies being changed into our glorious bodies that will be able to handle eternity with him and the glories of heaven. And I long for that time. I'm so excited about that. But he says it's going to happen in the twinkling of an eye. He says in a moment. And that means that it's the smallest amount of time possible, so small it can't even be divided. That's how quickly it's going to happen. So the blinking of your eye is pretty slow compared to that. No time for those last minute adjustments. One of my friends in Belize, made a choice to leave the church. He made a choice to go against a very clear scriptural doctrine and to live in sin. And when I was talking to him about it, confronting him about it, and begging for him to reconsider, he says, no. He says, I'm going to wait till I'm on my deathbed to repent. Probably won't have that time. We won't have that choice. Most of us, we may not have that chance for that last minute change. And I'm hoping if it works out for us to head to Belize this February, I'm hoping to talk to him again. James 5:7-9 are some scriptures, a couple of verses there. I'll just read it to you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. And then he gives a warning that's interesting. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. What does he mean, grudge not one against another? It's a little different than most of the times the way we would use grudge today, but it means literally grumble. So don't grumble about each other. Oh, surely here in church we're not going to grumble about anybody else, about the brother sitting beside you there, right? Some of the other translations said, say no hard things against one another. Don't grumble against one another. Do not make complaints against one another. Do not cry out in condemnation of one another. And why does he give that warning? It's because Jesus' return is coming. It's imminent. It's right here. He says, behold, the judge standeth before the door. And he says, basically he's saying, if you're living this way, you will be condemned when Jesus comes back. So there's a danger. He's warning us. You know, maybe you know somebody who's like that. They just tend to see only the negative things in other people. And what's the result? It's grumbling. It's always a dismal, depressing conversation that they have. Maybe you know someone who's, maybe it's one of us, that they feel people are always out to get them. Some people are just seemingly always ready to get into a debate with others. You know, it doesn't matter what you say, they have to, jump on it. Those are just some of the ways that could cause us to fall into this thing that James is warning us. James gives a lot of warnings about our tongues. And so he's saying, because of Jesus' return, make sure you don't fall into judgment. Don't be grumbling about each other. So that's interesting that we don't often think about maybe the fact that relational issues could make that I'm not ready for his coming. 1 Thessalonians 5:2 says, "For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night." I don't know if any of you have had your house broken into and stuff stolen. Anybody that happened to you? Okay, if one or two. Thieves are pretty smart. Well, not really, but they go about it. They try to think it through. They come when you're least expecting it, right? So when our house was broken into in Belize, both times I think we were down, for those of you who've been there, down by the road is the school and the church, and then back up the hill was the house. And both times the church people were all down here, right at the church, out on the front patio. But we were all having a good time. One time was after Christmas caroling, and I forget what the other time was some kind of event going on too. And they knew we were all distracted down here, and they had a little watchman posted up here where he could see, everything. They choose the time when it's least expected, and they least expect to be interrupted. And I think that's what he's saying. He says, "The day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night." It's not that it's a negative thing as such, but it's that unexpected. It's without warning, again, that twinkling of an eye, just when we're least expecting it. So I guess it all depends on whether we're ready or not as to how we see the coming of the Lord. If we're ready, it's really not, I was going to say it's really not a fearful thing, but honestly, there's times when I think about it, there is just a bit of a healthy fear that goes through me. Am I truly ready? And I think that's good. That's healthy. We should check. We should make sure. But it's not that, we're just petrified. It's not that fear. I remember living that way when hidden sins in my life. I knew I wasn't ready. So it all depends if we're ready or not. There's coming a day that regardless of how I look on the surface, when my heart will really be exposed, my life. 1 Corinthians 4:5 talks about it. "Therefore judge nothing before the time until the Lord come," and this part especially, "who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsel of the heart. And then shall every man have praise of God." I think Paul was the context. I think some people were accusing him of some things, and he was saying, "I'm free in conscience. I know, God is my judge." I think that's what he was saying. But the day of the Lord will bring to light the hidden things of darkness, will make manifest the counsels of the heart, and then shall every man have praise of God. The way that I live consistently gives a good indication of where I'm at. There's hypocrites can hide things. That's true. And yet the fruit of a person's life, we can tell which way they're leaning. Are they leaning toward the righteous side? Are they leaning towards the evil side? And isn't it Ecclesiastes 11 where it talks about if the tree fall toward the south or toward the north, in that place where the tree falleth it shall be. And it's talking about our death. Whichever way I've leaned in life, whether it's towards evil or towards righteousness, when that point of death happens, especially when it's a quick, unexpected death, that's how my eternity will be. When my dad, on that Tuesday early afternoon, when he took his last walk, almost made it back home, and then apparently, nobody really knows, but apparently just that quickly his life was gone. He just fell face down on the road. The way that he was leaning, righteously or unrighteously, I tend to think his life was leaning toward the righteous side. That's how our eternity is going to be. So we have to prepare today. And we have to make that a pattern of life. That's how we take heed. We watch. We pray. Those are the things that are going to keep us in the right path. And then death the second coming is not a thing to be feared. It is actually a thing that we can welcome. As we die, so shall we be judged. So if there is anyone here today and you're just forging ahead in life and you're not out loud thinking, well, I have time to get ready later on, I want to do a few more things. If that's your pattern of life, you're on a bad road, and repent, change. We don't know which breath will be our last. Amid all the warnings that Jesus gave, in Luke 21, I found one encouraging thing. Luke 21, verse 28. You may want to turn to that just to read that. And there may be others that I missed, but this is one encouraging thing. All the rest were warnings. Take heed. Be not deceived. Watch. Pray. He's telling us to stay on guard. In Luke 21:28, he says, and when these things begin to come to pass, then look up. Lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Your salvation will be finally complete. We are, there's sort of an initial step of salvation when we begin that spiritual journey. Today we are being saved. We call it being sanctified. And yet there is a sense of that final salvation happening when he comes back. And he says, look up, lift up your heads. Your redemption is coming close, that day of the Lord. And that's the encouragement. So we can anticipate that. There's only about 3 places that that word is actually used, the part where then look up, and it means a literal lifting up of the body. So maybe it would just be a good exercise for us when we're outside to just stop every once in a while and just look up to heaven and just talk to God about his coming. He's sending his son again and making sure we're ready. Just that, I think sometimes the physical things we do are just good for us. It makes us aware, and I think it'd be good physical exercise for us to just do that literally. Look up, lift up your head in anticipation of our salvation. When Jesus returns, our salvation will be complete. Are you ready? Just want to end with Jesus' last warning in the end of Mark 13 there. Verse 37 says, what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. And it just means stay awake. Let's all stay awake and be ready. Let's kneel for prayer.